From the University of Nebraska at Omaha, this is NCITE Insights. I'm your host, Erin Grace. Join us as we discuss today's most pressing issues in terrorism and targeted violence with experts from the field. Viewers and listeners, today with me is one Sam Hunter. He's a regular on this podcast, Regents Foundation Professor of Psychology, IO Psychology here in Omaha, and he is NCITE Senior Scientist and Director of Academic Research. Here to talk to you, Sam, kind of as a follow-up to New Orleans and Las Vegas. Yeah. We are still barely into the new year. Fires are raging in LA. Yeah. So that has bumped, rightly so probably, but these two attacks off the public's radar. One of the latest angles to come up was the use of emerging tech. So just quickly for those tuning in, the New Year's Day attack occurred in the early hours of New Year's Day. A man from Texas, apparently inspired by ISIS, plowed his rented F-150 into a crowd on Bourbon Street, killed 14 people, died in a shootout with police. He had explosives. I guess he had motive with the Islamic State to hurt people, but he also had, we recently learned, meta glasses. Yeah. He was wearing them during the attack, though not apparently recording, but he had gone twice before, the FBI said. Yep. And they even released the footage of him on a bike. You just see his hands on the handlebars. I did.
It's unsettling, isn't it? Yeah.
So unsettling.
It's so first person. That's what I think is unique about that type of footage, and using that type of technology is how much it sort of puts you in that first person seat.
Oh, yeah. I mean, here was the praline shop, and here were people coming and going. And it was jerky, right? Because he was moving his head. Yeah. When he's behind the garbage truck, he slows down.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah,
so
it's unsettling. Yeah.
React to that. Tell us what that means.
Yeah, so these are the types of things that we've been thinking about for a few years now, based on some of the work that we've done around mixed reality and metaverse technology, speculating a bit on how this type of technology could be used in a variety of ways, but pre-planning, planning for an attack was one of those. So we heard about the attack and got some indication early on about it being ISIS-inspired. And we're all sort of paying attention to the different techniques and approaches as a terrorism center. And then the news came through about the use of these glasses and technology, and immediately, we started pulling up our papers and documents and things we've been working on and saying, yeah, this is stuff we've been thinking about and anticipating. You never want to be right in these things, and it's sort of a weird scenario where you're sort of like, yes, this is what we thought. We wish we were wrong in a lot of ways, but in this case we weren't. And it's something we've been thinking about and anticipating given the rise of these types of technology.
Sam, it makes me think of one of the first exercises you had us do where we put on not meta glasses, but something like that, the Oculus.
Yeah.
And we're in our hallway and we can grab weapons we can just walk the walk. So why is that reconnaissance different than just him visiting and walking Bourbon Street?
Sure. In some ways it's a natural extension, so I don't mean to suggest that it's sort of wholly qualitatively different, but I think there are some things that are somewhat unique. People have been doing, pre-planning walkthroughs since folks have thought about doing harmful and destructive things. They've also been, using footage to record in a number of ways for a number of years now. The new technology to me is somewhat different, given the immersive nature of it. So by having your field of view and footage being captured here, just around your eyes, you get a much better perspective from an immersion standpoint about what it would be like as you go back and revisit that footage and review that footage. It gives you much more information around lines of sight, the kinds of things that you would look at, and from a pre-planning perspective, lets you feel much more comfortable once the attack itself occurs, because it's more in line with sort of how you've been thinking. So there's that element to it. There's also the sort of discrete nature of that technology. So if you're holding up even a camera on your phone, people get a sense of, oh, you're taking footage or you're taking video. And while there are ways to take footage more discreetly, The glasses themselves are very discreet. They just look like normal glasses. And in that sense, you get very immersive, highly detailed, high resolution imagery that you can review later in a way that folks aren't really aware of it. So there are some concerning things. It also speaks to a broader trend, I think, of emerging use of technology such that when you start to incorporate some of the other elements that he didn't seem to, but as folks use these technologies in the future, may likely, so AI is integrated with these technologies as well. So the ability to look at landmarks and get feedback, you could start incorporating some of those features as well. So this step begets the next step, and begets the next step as well. So there's just a trend that's concerning and in some ways expected as technology comes online.
Speak to me about the psychological impact of the immersive nature of this. And you kind of hinted at this, how it's different than other surveilling that happens, but I just can't help but watching it through his eyes to imagine this more directly than I guess I could if I was looking at a map or other forms of media.
So you've got two sides. One actually occurred and then the other didn't, but if it had occurred, would be another level and another layer. And I'm in some ways surprised, and it's unclear why the second didn't occur. So I'll come to that in a moment.
Okay.
Step one, though, from a reconnaissance standpoint, again, sort of capturing this footage in such a clear way that's consistent with eye lines, with the way you turn your head, with the way you anticipate, traffic is riding on a bike and sort of, you're looking down one road and you can then simulate what it would be like to drive a vehicle in a very similar way versus if you just had a fixed or a static camera. So already it's giving you that sense of things to look for, what it would feel like, and as you go back and review that footage, you're doing at least some mental simulation of that attack and you're getting more comfortable with it. So he did it twice, he did reconnaissance twice. As he rewatched those videos and he found himself, months later in that moment, these are things that he has been able to rehearse, given the nature of that footage, in a more immersive and simulated way than, say, if it had been simply still images or even just footage taken from somewhere else that was not as immersive. So there's just a sense of being able to better plan and get more comfortable with that specific scenario.
The word that jumped out at me that you just said was comfortable. Yeah. And that idea, does that increase the likelihood that you would do this and not back out? Do you know?
I mean, you can speculate. So again, we're definitely speculating in this scenario. But practice with anything gives you more comfort in the actual situation in the scenario. So, to use maybe unfairly a sports example, the reason you practice as much as you do is when that event occurs or that moment in a game occurs, you fall back to your training. And so rehearsing, planning, going over these things multiple times means that in the heat of the moment, you fall back to the things that you've mentally practiced, if not physically practiced. In this case, he also sort of physically practiced by walking some different routes. But by having that footage, he was able to mentally and cognitively engage in more rehearsal beforehand, which I can't say for sure because it's not like we have a clear experiment. But research in psychology would say that rehearsal, that practice, makes you more effective in high-stress scenarios.
Got it, yeah.
It's why the military engages in practice and rehearsal before they go to battle as well. Similar, at least from a psychological standpoint, similar kind of phenomenon.
Yeah, autopilot, right?
Yeah, because you fall back to what you've been, is going on in your head a bunch of times. So that was one. So the pre-planning part is another. The second is if the attack had occurred. So he had the glasses on when the attack occurred, did not capture footage during that time. Had he done that, and I actually see a lot of terrorist organizations engage in video capture similarly, then you would have had something from a propaganda standpoint that would feel very immersive from a victim perspective because you're watching something that's horrific. And there are examples of that where there's sort of head-mounted cameras, but the eye level to me feels quite a bit different. And in many ways, I'm relieved that we don't have that footage because, again, from a selling an ISIS standpoint, although they haven't fully embraced claiming this attack, would be quite powerful from a propaganda standpoint.
Sure, sure. It's more about perspective, less distance, shrinks the distance, right?
Feels very real. Yep.
Even from the top of your head to your eye level is really striking.
Yeah.
That's so different. Okay, so I'm not wearing meta glasses.
Yeah. We have the other ones, but yeah.
Yeah, I thought maybe you could pull them out.
Yeah.
We could talk about them.
So these are the last generation, and they're the sunglasses, so they're not the same sort of clear lens glasses that we have. But a couple things that we can at least point out. We capture in the footage, been good. As you've got lenses, so these are where the cameras are.
Okay.
So very discreet, nondescript. You also have this button here that will turn on, take a still image or turn on video.
Really?
So yeah, just a double click will turn on those things.
Okay.
And then you've also got, and this wasn't talked about much in the media, is as you've got audio as well. And so you can actually make it go louder by sliding it up and double tap to turn on whatever you have synced up. But these glasses, or at least the ones that he used, have the potential, couple things, have the potential for live streaming. So not only could you capture footage that could then be released, that would have been up to law enforcement had they wanted to do that, so maybe that's a stopgap. But had he live streamed it, it would have been much harder to capture and contain, I should say, that footage. But then you also have the ability to have end users speaking to you or getting feedback in real time during an attack, which is scary from my perspective in terms of encouragement and that sort of thing. So the newer technology has a number of features there, and then also these don't have these, but AI is integrated with the newer versions of these glasses, so you've got some indication, a little screen that you can see some content that's popping up. So AI will scan landmarks and help with sort of guiding and direction. And then there's been some prototyping. Some students at Harvard, for example, were able to allow for facial recognition using these glasses. And a user could walk up and I could learn some information about you before I even got to you and say, oh, don't you work at UNO? And So that, again, this is not just speculative because these students were able to do that. Again, some really bright kids, but were able to do it. And so the potential for misuse
it's huge.
Gets pretty high. So again, we're seeing that sort of step one of just simply capturing footage, but as more and more tech comes online in a discrete way, the ability of malign actors to use some of these things is concerning.
May I try them on?
Yeah, put them on. The sunglasses will make you look cool.
All right, so these are my 2-year-old glasses. I gotta get to the eye doctor because I can't see anything anymore. But I'm used to wearing glasses, so I slide these Ray-Bans on.
Yeah, they just look like regular Ray-Bans.
They do, and they're a tiny bit heavier than my normal glasses.
Yep, not too bad.
Do I look cool?
You look very cool in glasses.
Okay.
Sunglasses.
Would they hold up my hair? I feel like I don't want to do that with a $1,000 piece of equipment.
This is actually not $1,000. Those are like
How much are they?
$300. That's the thing, is they are not cost prohibitive. Some of the other pieces of tech are pretty expensive. I'd have to double check, but I know these were like $299 or something. And I think the ones that he wore were in that price range, at least under $500. So not as cost prohibitive as you might think, given the tech. Yeah.
I mean, the design is so sleek. They're not clunky.
It's Ray-Ban. They know what they're doing. I love Ray-Bans.
I know. And what I would be looking at is the little Ray-Ban label, not on this camera right here. I mean, I don't think I would even notice that.
Yeah.
That's kind of like the risky business sunglasses.
There's supposed to be a red light that pops up when you're capturing footage, but...
Oh, really? So somebody might think like, what's happening?
I remain somewhat skeptical in that blacking that out isn't beyond a Sharpie or a little piece of tape. So,
but okay, so speak to the idea. Not only, I mean, it's just more and more immersion. You're getting deeper and deeper into this. Speak to the gamification of that.
Yeah, anything that's taken in first-person perspective start to get picked up by various communities. And look, I'm a gamer and I love that world, and 99.9% of folks that engage in that space are great. But there is a growing space online in the gaming community where they're taking this kind of footage and this type of content and really spreading and sharing it and kind of embracing it from just a gamification or video game perspective. And so there have been images and video from other shootings that folks have taken and put on, overlaid, almost like a video, made it look like a video game. Same thing would have happened in this scenario, and they do, various things that are horrific to see, but really desensitize in many ways the
for
true
sure.
horror of it. Yeah.
Right. Yes. Thank you for saying that. My gosh. Well, okay. I'm still grappling with the idea that you could be walking down a street and your sensory overload, right? Like this something on your glasses is telling you this is Bourbon Street and this is the blah blah blah, the Wikipedia entry for that, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm hearing your voice tell me what to do.
Sure. Yeah.
Or encourage me.
Yeah. It's a brave new world.
And this is happening now when platforms are kind of easing off,
Yeah.
fact-checking
We're sort of going into the more open area discussion around use of this technology with sort of pros and cons, and part of the cons is safety and security. And so we have to figure out a way to mitigate some of these things. Yeah.
So let's turn our attention to Las Vegas. A few hours after the attack in New Orleans, of course, nobody knew right away were these events related. But what a day! But it turns out a decorated Army combat veteran, active duty soldier on leave, blows up a Cybertruck, kills himself, shoots himself, blows up a Cybertruck outside a Trump hotel in Las Vegas. I mean, there's symbolism galore here. Miraculously, no one is seriously injured in this explosion. But what have we learned since about what was in the vehicle and of course the fact that he used ChatGPT?
Yeah, that's the big one to me. So you've got two events that, at least from a coordination perspective, are unrelated, but they do have linkages between them. You've got a couple of veterans, for example, is sort of one of the things that jumps out, or at least former Army, both former Army, or one current and one former. But then to me, you've got technology as a connecting thread. So you've got the use of metaglasses in the New Orleans attack, and then you've got the use of ChatGPT in the Las Vegas attack, both of which were the first of their kind. So we hadn't seen the metaglasses used prior in an attack, nor had we seen, at least to my knowledge, and at least to law enforcement's knowledge, use of AI, ChatGPT in this case. There's lots of different AIs, but ChatGPT here in the planning of an attack. And so he asked some questions. This individual in Las Vegas asked some questions that to me suggested cause for concern. Well, I know that there was no individuals harmed other than himself, obviously, in the vehicle. Some of the questions he was asking ChatGPT suggested that that explosion could have been bigger, or at least he was potentially considering it. And anytime, at least from my perspective, you're developing a vehicle-borne IED, so a VBID, you're thinking about at least some act of destruction. And so there is cause for concern, at least from a violence perspective standpoint. We don't want people ever harming themselves. We care about that, both as a psychologist and as somebody who thinks about things like threat assessment, but also we certainly don't want them developing VBIDs to do so, because the destruction, and then who knows who else is around or how these things go off. So the use of technology, again, is that thread is something that jumps out given the work that we've done.
We talked about this a little bit in the hallway, Sam, but maybe you can share about when I imagine attack planning or any kind of planning using ChatGPT, what guardrails are there so that even in the widgetry, a human is getting alerted that someone is thinking of these things based on their search history, right?
Yeah, not necessarily human, but at least the algorithms themselves are designed to be at least somewhat protective. So there are guardrails on ChatGPT specifically. If you ask ChatGPT to do some specific planning on dangerous things rather than just sort of a query, you seem to use it more as a query than a planning perspective. It will sort of come back and say, these are not the kinds of things that we can give you, type of thing. So there are some built-in guardrails despite it being fairly open in that regard. Two things, however. One is it's possible to remove guardrails. I can say that definitively. And then two, there are a number of other AI tools that have been developed that have either far fewer guardrails or no guardrails at all. Some of those are available in different corners of the web that I won't point to specifically, but can say that they exist. So this idea that we're going to be saved by the guardrails on AI as a potentially nefarious tool, I think is misguided. I think there are ways to circumvent it. And then there are also simply AI tools that are being developed that aren't built with guardrails that malign actors will have access to. And so we need to anticipate that and move accordingly, as opposed to really thinking that I think we're covered by the technology. Maybe that's my cynical view on it, but I don't think this is going away, nor do I think malign actors will necessarily steer away from it as more and more tools get developed that can serve those kinds of purposes.
So this may be a dumb question. I'm just thinking about drawing the lens out broadly about technology in general. So when you mention the word query with ChatGPT, and as a new adherent of ChatGPT, this episode is
it's a great tool. I love technology. Yeah.
But where can I take teens skiing in Minneapolis? And yes, dear reader, there is skiing in Minneapolis. It just spits it out, and it's so much better than Google. I can't get over
100%.
everything. How do I shut off this daughter's phone and start this one? I mean, I'm using it for everything. How do I make a meal for this? It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, so much faster, so much better. But so is everything. Every technological advance from the wheel makes life faster, easier, better in a way. Presents danger. Fire presents danger.
Everything's double-edged.
So in that regard, Google's been around for a while. Did that increase attacks? I mean,
I think access to information certainly did. I could think of the early days of some of the domestic violence extremism world where content was able to be shared online in a way that had not been possible before. And so you're able to spread both ideology and hate in unique ways. ISIS is another example. So having a huge online presence, more so than the physical presence that they had 10 years ago. And so, the internet by far has opened up avenues and access, and then tools like Google allowed folks to find those things easier. And so, yes, it has increased the potential for harm in the way that it's increased the potential for helping ourselves when something hurts or we're trying to find a doctor. Or everything, I think, has these double-edged. That's our ski slope in Minnesota. So everything has this double-edged aspect and sword to it, and I think malign actors are not immune and will benefit in some ways given the things that they try to do.
I mean, just think about the rapid news cycle we're in, but it wasn't that long ago that, a man shot and killed a healthcare executive in New York City. Yeah. And he was found very quickly.
Yeah, and you've got 3D printed weapons there and that's also sort of a first case use there too. So rapid rise of technology across the board. But he was, to your point, was found very quickly given the access to this technology.
So the question then is, can the good guys keep up with the bad guys?
It's hard. There's a lot of constraints that the good guys face that the bad guys don't. When I talk to folks in the USG, I'm both in government. I'm both impressed by their ingenuity and innovation, but then I'm also sort of attempt to encourage them to try to embrace some of these things, and we've seen that. So DHS in particular has a pretty robust AI plan. They know that this has to be a tool in their toolkit. I think we need to see more of that and more agencies embrace this technology. And I have seen that here, for example. Our local field office with the FBI is great and really creative and innovative. You see pockets of it. I think it needs to be more systematic and more embracing of these tools so that we can get ahead of where the bad guys are. Bad guys aren't worried about embracing these things. They'll do it if it serves a purpose. We need to also move quickly and I think leverage our capabilities in such a way that makes us be ahead of it rather than chasing behind it.
Okay, well, good. Final thoughts? This has gone really fast.
I mean, I think what I just said is probably the biggest one, which is the bad guys are getting more creative. They're embracing technology in ways that we didn't anticipate until the last 4 or 5 years. It's incumbent upon us to out-creative them, and part of that requires sort of breaking a few things and moving forward, because we simply can't be in the position of having to chase tactics that extremists and terrorists are engaging in. We need to be more anticipating of those and get ahead of those. We have to. So.
Which is what your journal article kind of pointed to, and some of your work has pointed to, which, by the way, can be found on our website, unomaha.edu/insight. You're the lead item, Sam. So thank you so much for coming on the show yet again.
It's always fun. Yeah.
Great to have your expertise here.
Thanks, Erin.
This series is produced by Ben Badafarano, Erin Grace, Scott Jordan, and Blake Ersch. Thank you for joining us for another episode of NCITE Insights. The National Counterterrorism, Innovation, Technology, and Education Center, or NCITE, is an academic center of excellence for the Department of Homeland Security. Looking to find out more? Check out our website at ncite.unomaha.edu or email us at ncite@unomaha.edu.